Good morning. Welcome to my podcast. My name is Isaac Stant. Episode 9. I don't know why I always feel weird with the introduction. I gotta figure out a better way to come and introduce myself. I just wanted to talk about today. It's more of like a story time type of day, but also just a little bit of the importance of safety when you're surfing big waves. There's a lot of information out there. So much, but kind of just simple stuff, like almost basics, but just like the very important things that go into surfing big waves. But I own a surf school here on Maui, and it's called Stant Surfing Lessons. It's just my last name, and I've met a lot of people over the years, and obviously they're always just really interested in like, what's the biggest wave you've surfed? And you know, and I'm like, oh, I've surfed Jaws, and they're like, oh my gosh, like, it's always, have you ever fallen on a big wave? And it's like, yeah, and then like I'll tell them a little bit of stuff, but I never really just go like in depth about it. So I was kind of just wanted to share one of my most I think one of the craziest experiences I've had at Jaws, and I've definitely had a few, but this one in the sense of just like pretty much getting hurt, and just the overall just like scene and environment of kind of what happened. But yeah, it's kind of fun to, I don't want to say fun, but it is fun to kind of look back on it and just be like, well, that's crazy. This was many years ago. And it was kind of like I think this day was a little bit more west, but there was some peaks coming more from the north out at Jaws. And I don't know. I know a lot of people who have surfed out there kind of know this feeling, but when you're out there for hours, you get you get highs and lows. And I used to get like weird, like adrenaline dumps, like the whole time while I'm out there, where it's like I'll just be like, whoa, I'm ready, I'll just huck it on one, and then it's like, oh, like, oh man, this is kind of nuts, what am I doing, you know? I think we've all kind of experienced that. I don't know, for me at least. And yeah, so this was a day I was out there for hours, and I was kind of in between those adrenaline dumps. And I remember I was kind of in between the north peak and the west peak, and kind of just get right into it. I was out there for a long time, and this set kind of came in, so I went for it, paddling, and I missed it, right? And I'm like, fuck. I think we all know that. You're just like, oh, and you just like, in the back of your head, every time you miss a wave, you're always just like, oh, bruh, if I turn around and there's a set, I'm going to be bummed. So pretty much that's what it was. I turned around, and I was in between the north and the west peak, and it was pretty much coming like, it was like kind of almost bending more west, but the north was like, it was already peaking. I was almost like in the worst spot ever trying to paddle back out. And I remember it was weird. I remember paddling, and everything was just like slightly slow motion. I remember just being like, oh, fuck, this isn't good. Oh, yeah, I'm about to get absolutely smoked. So the west peak is coming, and Kai Lenny is freaking, I don't know, this wave was like 15, 20 feet, and he's airdropping, like just literally just free falling. And I'm looking up at him, and I'm like, yeah, if he's like airdropping like up here, I'm like down here just about to get absolutely smoked. And I see him like airdropping sideways, catches the rail, falls. And I remember just duck diving. I don't even know. What did I do? Oh, yeah. I remember like literally thinking like, oh, I'm going to try and duck dive over this like teepee freaking A-frame Jaws set. And then I was like, no, I'm not. And I threw my board on the side. And I remember just like I said, everything was like super slow motion. And I just got like sucked back. I remember it was like, okay, I keep saying slow motion, but it was like slow motion. It was like, and then it was just like straight to like 100. Just, I get smoked, and so if these are my legs rip out like this, almost like I'm doing the splits. So both my groins go. I hear this underwater too. It's the craziest thing. I hear it literally underwater. It's all, and I'm like, oh. And so as my legs rip, like my groin, both of it just like, you just hear a ripping sound. And then my knees, so if like I'm using my arms, but if my legs are whipping out like this, like a splits, and okay, let's use this. And these are my knees. Both my knees, as my groin just rips, like both groin, you just hear like a ripping sound. You just hear just huge pop. Just a gnarly pop, all right? So both my knees just pop. Boom. And I'm like, oh shit. And I couldn't move because my body was just like thrashing. So I couldn't like feel my, I wanted to like initially just like feel my knees, because I literally thought that it felt like my knees just ripped off, like it just broke. It was the weirdest feeling. So it was numb and I couldn't feel. So I'm getting smoked, and the whole time I'm like, in a way, it was really weird because I took my mind was like off of like, usually when you get pounded at like on big waves, especially for me at least, you start thinking about like the breath hold, like, oh, I'm going to be under long. It was like, I wasn't even thinking about that at that point, which was probably good because it is so mental when it comes to like your breathing, especially when you're holding your breath under water. And it just my thoughts just went straight to like, is like my knees just broken right now? Like anyways. So I come up, boom, in the chaos of it. And I'm just like in the middle. And then there's another set's not like breaking in front of me, but the whitewash, like a 10-foot foam of whitewash is coming. And I remember just like going on my back and bringing my knees up. And then I looked at my knees and I'm like, okay, my knees are fine. I was feeling my knees. I could feel it. It just was super numb and sore. And I was like, oh shit. Like, okay, my bones aren't broken out of my knees, whatever. And then I got smoked by the whitewash. And I remember I was just getting kind of smoked. It was probably like, I did that probably like 4 or 5 times. There's just whitewash. And this goes to kind of safety. At the time, for pretty much the whole time I've surfed out with Jaws, and I surfed out there from like my early 20s for like 6 years straight. And we just never had proper safety. And it was just stupid. If I go back and I think about it, I'm like, it's just mind blowing to me. Like, we just never set up certain safety things. We just did it. And it was just, not smart. Don't do that. Make sure you always have a safety crew. Make sure you have all the updated versions of your, inflated vests and all that stuff. You need it, like, especially if you're surfing big waves. It's just, get it. And if you can't get it, then just, I don't know, wait until you can, borrow from friends. It's just so important. And then having your safety crew out there with jet skis is just, you need it. And anyways, to go back to that, I didn't have any safety, like crew, nothing set up. Like, I literally, for a long time, a lot of us did, jump off the rocks. No V1 suits well, they did, but I didn't have one. I just had this like freaking floaty, had buckles on the chest. And and you just go out, and it's just like chaos. But I was inside, and so Kai Lenny ended up, I think his fin like chomped his foot while he got smoked on that wave, the one that I got smoked on too, duck diving. And it was really bad. So there was all the boats and all the skis were out there, and I was in a really weird place too, right? Because I don't think people actually, like, you know, it's hard to keep track, especially if something like that happens too, you know? So I'm on the inside, like in the middle, I'm getting smoked. My knees are just like, you know, I'm like, okay, I can feel them, whatever. And then I was like trying to wave for like some jet ski assistance, but, you know, everyone was focused outside, and I was getting far in at this point. It was a while, and I was just like, oh, fuck. And then I seen literally a helicopter taking Kailani up. Like a helicopter came in, picked him up, and they just took off. And I was already to the point where I was looking, I was at like, so there's like where you jump off the normal, there's like the second bay at Jaws, and I was actually in the second bay like I was looking into it at this point, and I was just like, fuck. I was like, all right, I'm just gonna freaking swim in. So I just swam in. Boom. Swimming in. I get on the rocks, you know, I see my board's just broken. It's inside on the rocks. Initially, when I get in on the rocks and I'm standing there, I remember just thinking like, whoa, like, okay, that sucked, but my knees felt fine. All right. Like I was like, oh, I feel okay. And it was probably just all the adrenaline. And I remember grabbing my boards. It's like in pieces, and I'm like walking. And I'm walking maybe like 20 feet, and my freaking knees just start slipping. Like, if you ever like hurt your MCLs before or blew out your MCLs, it's like, yeah. So if like this is, I can't see. If this is like your inside of your MCL right here, my knee when I'd walk would just like, it just kept like slipping in, like slipping sideways. It was the weirdest feeling, and I was all, oh, that was weird. Yes. So anyways, I hiked it. I had my boards. I hiked it all the way back up to the other side of the bay, all the way up the cliff, wrapped my knees up, went to the doctors. You know, I was in like, I didn't need surgery or anything. It was just like it was like slight tears on your MCLs, but not like, it wasn't like to this day, actually, I have to, it doesn't affect me crazy, but I have to like literally just make sure I'm doing tons of mobility and stuff, and just like keeping up on my knees. Cause yeah, but I was in these braces. Both my knees were in these big old braces for like 6 months. And that was probably one of the craziest like experiences I've had at Jaws. Yeah. I don't know. I probably could have told that story a lot better, but my mind was just blah. It's super crazy to go back into the archives in your brain and start replaying it. But yeah, I think I've never really just like told a story in the depth about like how it was and all that stuff, you know? And I don't even know if people know of that situation, but they don't, like, they just know like, oh, this happened. Isaac blew his knees out. Kailani like gashed his foot, but there's so much like more going on. So that was a crazy experience. And yeah. And where I'm at today in my big wave journey is I haven't surfed Jaws in probably like 8 years. Yeah. I surfed it many years after that. Pretty much, you know, you start really going into your head when you're surfing waves like that, and you get older and older and older, and you start, gaining all this experience and all these just situations that you get into out there. And, you know, for me, I just kind of came to the decision that I love surfing. Surfing is my passion. I feel like I always have that desire, that rush of big waves. I enjoy it, but surfing to that degree and level at Jaws for as long as I did until up to 8 years ago, you just make a decision, you know, like, and for me, it was like, the risk isn't worth the reward for me out there anymore, you know? Like, I just, I can go surf 10, 12-foot bay. And yeah, it's still super gnarly, but it's a different, not that I'm not saying, Honolulu or any other spots are not gnarly. It is all still super gnarly. It's just different, especially for me, like when you're surfing Jaws, like at the time too, it's like I wasn't getting, I didn't have, like I had friends, but in the sense of like they had boats and stuff, but it was very limited, like only certain individuals were getting on the boats and the skis and all that. So most of the time I would drive up to the cliff and I would just paddle out the bottom, and just doing that alone, man, it takes like so much like just rush and energy to just get down there, and you have to make it through like a 8 to 10 foot shore break with all these boulders, and you get smoked, and it's just a never ending chaos. And I think that's what makes it super exciting. But yeah, you just, like for me, I just reach a point where I'm like, yeah, I think there's just certain people out there that truly just, if you put all the cameras away, you put all the media away, you put all that away, I think there's just selective people who will just like, they truly just love that chaos, that level of adrenaline out there. And if you're one of those people that you could put all that stuff away and you just truly love it, then that's where you're supposed to be. And for me, it was like, that's not where I'm at anymore out there. So that's kind of how that is. But in the sense of safety and being out at Jaws, it is so important in big waves in general that you have all the update equipment. You have your training crew, you have your people. It is so important. You need it. It's essential. So make sure that you do those things, flotation jackets, flotation suits, your inflation suits, your jet ski assistants, trusted crew members, the right equipment, all that stuff. I think a lot of people do know that, but some people may. But this is my experience. Like I said, I did all this, and I went into it with none of that. And I'm not saying that's smart, Sometimes, they say ignorance is bliss, and it is true. Sometimes you just do shit and you don't even really understand how severe the consequences are. And believe me, I've gotten myself very close to maybe possibly near-death situations at Jaws. Touching the, knocking on that door a little bit. So, yeah. And I could tell you I probably would be in very different situations. If you're having a jet ski and you get to kind of just watch the line of it, be out there on the boat, having water, being able to hydrate, having food, be able to go back up, get nutrition in your body, get your body those electrolytes that it needs, get your body that energy that it needs, take a break, having inflation suits, having trusted crew members to pick you up. A lot of it comes into play where it can really just make all the difference. And at the time I didn't have that. I kind of just was doing it, With that being said, yeah, a little story time. I think that was fun. What is that? 18 minutes. Let's go. And hope you enjoyed it. I have plenty of these, but it can maybe get a little boring. But that was one of the craziest experience I've had at a Jaws. All right. I hope you enjoyed this podcast. All right. Until next time. Aloha.